America was founded as a Christian nation. This is a repeated mantra by Christians on the radical right. The fact that we were not founded on any religion, whether it be Christian or something else, and that our founders actually went to great lengths to make this clear, is irrelevant to them. They ignore factual history and attempt to rewrite it, in line with common conservative revisionist history, with their own mythology front and center. I am not interested in getting into the truth of their religion. I don't care what anyone believes. If you want to worship the rock in your backyard, well, have at it and be happy. It doesn't hurt me. You are welcome to try to convince me that your rock is the one and only truth as long as I'm willing to engage you in conversation. If I'm not interested, leave me alone. But when you try to force me to live by your rock's rules by enforcing its precepts through law, that's when we have a very big problem. The Declaration of Independence references the divine only in deistic general terms, using nature's God, creator, supreme judge of the world, and divine providence. Not once does it specifically reference the Christian God or Jesus. References to God or the divine are completely absent from our Constitution, the document that officially created the United States of America. Our founders were very hesitant to include references to the divine in it. They had for too long been subjected to the philosophy and tyranny of the divine right of kings, and were not interested in supporting any notion of divine or supernatural support for any government they established. The phrase "under God" wasn't inserted into the Pledge of Allegiance until the McCarthy-era anti-communist hysteria in 1954. The pledge didn't even exist in our founders' time. The original was written by a Baptist minister, Francis Bellamy, in 1892, and did not contain any religious references. There was no pledge at all prior to 1892, not after the American Revolution when our nation was born, and not even during or after the Civil War when our nation was divided and then unified again. Indivisible, but not under God. "In God We Trust" was not on any U.S. paper currency or coins when our nation was founded and did not begin to appear until after the Civil War. Our founders chose the motto "E pluribus unum" for the new country, out of many, one. This remained our motto until 1956, again during the Red Scare, when the new motto "In God We Trust" was adopted by Congress and approved by President Eisenhower. Fed by Joseph McCarthy, the mid-20th century Christian uprising was a response to the notion of the atheist communist, an attempt to mythologize our own history, and the moment radical right Christian fundamentalists began trying to redefine our nation and take it over. That effort continues to this day, even as their own numbers continue to dwindle at an ever faster rate. This is typical. When a former majority begins to become the minority, they get louder and more earnest in their attempts to avoid what has become inevitable. Here we will take a look at actual history, what our founders actually thought about the mixture of religion and the affairs of government. We'll look to George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Paine. Paine's writings and speeches were heavily influential among the colonists fighting for independence. He would later become persona non grata to radical Christians opposed to his own atheism, but he was respected and revered in his own time during the Revolution. Washington, Adams, and Madison were all Christians. Franklin and Jefferson were deists at best, and Paine was atheist. Yet they all came together in agreement of the type of republic they wished to establish, with religion completely absent from its operation over people of different faiths or no faith at all. Let's begin with our first president. George Washington was a devout Christian. His religion ran deep with his faith close to his heart. He wrote many times about what he believed to be the benefits of Christian belief and living, but never, not once, did he directly say or even imply that the Christian faith was either the only true faith or that it should remotely be considered a founding theology of our nation. On August 21st, 1790, he wrote to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, "May the children of the stock of Abraham, who dwell in this land, continue to merit and enjoy the good will of the other inhabitants, while every one shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. May the Father of all mercy scatter light and not darkness in our paths, and make us all in our several vocations useful here, and in his own due time and way everlastingly happy." He was making clear that those of the Jewish faith should be treated with equal respect, placing his own Christian faith neither above nor below it, but equal to it. But his use of the phrase, "Father of all mercies," was a clever combination of a biblical verse, 2 Corinthians 1:3, and a common reference among deists of the time when referencing the divine and various beliefs in it. Though he was himself not deist, he still knew the importance of using general terminology along the lines of what Jefferson used in the Declaration of Independence. This land was to be a safe land, everyone having the equal right to their own vine and fig tree, as he wrote, without government declaring which vine and tree were the right ones. This is especially prescient today, given the rising number of anti-Semitic neo-Nazi groups on the radical right, who Washington would find absolutely aberrant. He emphasized this once again 3 years later in a letter to the members of the New Jerusalem Church in Baltimore on January 27, 1793, when he wrote, "We have abundant reason to rejoice that in this land the light of truth and reason has triumphed over the power of bigotry and superstition, and that every person may here worship God according to the dictates of his own heart. In this enlightened age and in this land of equal liberty, it is our boast that a man's religious tenets will not forfeit the protection of the laws, nor deprive him of the right of attaining and holding the highest offices that are known in the United States." Christian, Jewish, Muslim, non-believer, Washington believed in a society that included all equally, giving superiority to none and protection to all. Remember that the Salem witch trials were only a century and a half old in Washington's time, no more distant to him than the Civil War is from us. He knew well the history of that, and the European witch trials and the medieval crusades before that, the use of Christianity as a construct of tyranny, a system of beliefs to be enforced through law at the expense of the lives of those who did not agree. He knew the strife it caused and referenced the enlightened and liberal policy, alluding to the Enlightenment, that religion should be set aside as a system of governance and enforced belief and no longer endanger peace of society. In fact, he practically resurrected Jefferson's wall of separation between church and state when he wrote to the United Baptist Churches of Virginia in May 1789, "I beg you be persuaded that no one would be more zealous than myself to establish effectual barriers against the horrors of spiritual tyranny and every species of religious persecution." Our founders were on the fringes of the Age of Enlightenment and heavily influenced by it. This included Washington. In fact, in a letter to Sir Edward Newenham on October 20th, 1792, he despaired, "Of all the animosities which have existed among mankind, those which are caused by a difference of sentiment in religion appear to be the most inveterate and distressing, and ought most to be deprecated. I was in hopes that the enlightened and liberal policy which has marked the present age would at least have reconciled Christians of every denomination so far that we should never again see their religious disputes carried to such a pitch as to endanger the peace of society." The importance of the Enlightenment in Washington's thinking was on full display when he gave his State of the Union on January 8, 1790, saying, "There is nothing which can better deserve your patronage than the promotion of science and literature. Knowledge is in every country the surest basis of public happiness." In today's anti-science and anti-intellectualist strain running through the radical right, Washington would be a sensible Christian wearing a mask and getting a vaccine. Our second president, John Adams, also a Christian, would echo Washington's views even more forcefully. Adams negotiated a treaty with Tripoli, modern Libya, officially titled the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between the United States of America and the Bey and subjects of Tripoli of Barbary of 1796. It was meant to secure commercial shipping rights and protect American ships in the Mediterranean Sea from local Barbary pirates. It was authored by Joel Barlow, an ardent Jeffersonian Republican, read and agreed to by Madison and the Tripoli parties, Muslims who the treaty referenced as Muslimen. They were heavily concerned that America was ultimately seeking another crusade to the Holy Land, and Adams was intent to put this to rest. The treaty, ratified unanimously by the Senate, stated, "As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Mussulman, and as the said states never have entered into any war or act of hostility against the Mohammedan nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries." This alone, a treaty negotiated and signed by one of our nation's founders, a number of them in the Senate ratifying the treaty, instantly puts an end to any notion that America was founded as a Christian nation. The divine right of kings notion always weighing heavily, Adams also made clear that such thinking was antithetical to our nation. In fact, he wanted to make clear that divine right of anything or anyone was completely irrelevant and inapplicable. In 1797, he wrote in the Defense of the Constitutions of Government of the United States of America, "The United States of America have exhibited, perhaps, the first example of governments erected on the simple principles of nature in the formation of the American governments. It will never be pretended that any persons employed in that service had interviews with the gods, or were in any degree under the influence of heaven. These governments were contrived merely by the use of reason and the senses." He dispensed with any notion of a religious founding of any sort, applying only human effort and reason, not spiritual belief, to the establishment of our republic and its constitution. Adams, though Christian, was not ignorant of the cruelty that had been done through history of those spreading his faith. He believed the teaching of Jesus had been bastardized to an unthinkable degree. He wrote to Thomas Jefferson on September 3, 1816, "I almost shudder at the thought of alluding to the most fatal example of the abuses of grief which the history of mankind has preserved, the cross. Consider what calamities that engine of grief has produced. With the rational respect that is due it, knavish priests have added prostitutions of it that fill or might fill the blackest and bloodiest pages of human history." He knew of Jefferson's deism and discontent with religious tyranny and sought to make clear his own agreement with parts of that thinking. In fact, Jefferson would follow Adams and become our third president. Thomas Jefferson was not Christian. He was deist, though he did believe in the principal teachings of the character of Jesus. In fact, the Jeffersonian Bible is well known and in his library at Monticello today. He literally cut out of the Bible only the words attributed directly to Jesus and included those in his own booklet, his own Bible, cutting out everything supernatural or divine and focusing only on the words he believed to be universally important. Calling himself a Christian in the sense that he actually tried to follow the teachings of Jesus, he referenced his Bible when he wrote to Charles Thomson on January 9, 1816, "I too have made a wee little book from the same materials, which I call the philosophy of Jesus. It is a paradigm of his doctrines, made by cutting the text out of the book and arranging them on the pages of a blank book. in a certain order of time or subject. A more beautiful or precious morsel of ethics I have never seen. It is a document in proof that I am a real Christian, that is to say, a disciple of the doctrines of Jesus, very different from the Platonists who call me infidel and themselves Christians and preachers of the gospel, while they draw all their characteristic dogmas from what its author never said nor saw. He had previously been overt about his belief in the worth of Jesus as a person, but not as a God, when he wrote to Benjamin Rusk on April 21st, 1803, "To the corruptions of Christianity I am indeed opposed, but not to the genuine precepts of Jesus himself. I am a Christian in the only sense in which he wished anyone to be, sincerely attached to his doctrines, in preference to all others, ascribing to himself every human excellence and believing he never claimed any other." He identified as a Christian only in the sense that one might identify as a Platonist or sophist, or follower of any other philosophy. He believed in the things Jesus said, but not in the divinity of the man. Jefferson was not a believer in the supernatural and divine references in the Bible. In fact, he was abundantly clear that he saw much of Christianity as no more than mythology, no different from ancient Greek fables, and that doing away with the mythological aspects of the religion would be most beneficial. He wrote to John Adams on April 11, 1823, "The truth is that the greatest enemies to the doctrines of Jesus are those calling themselves the expositors of them, who have perverted them for the structure of a system of fancy absolutely incomprehensible, and without any foundation in his genuine words. And the day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus, by the Supreme Being as his Father in the womb of a virgin, will be classed with the fable of the generations of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter. But we may hope that the dawn of reason and freedom of thought in these United States will do away all this artificial scaffolding and restore to us the primitive and genuine doctrines of this, the most venerated reformer of human errors." Reason. This was Jefferson's focus, not supernatural belief. Though he did believe in a divine source of some sort, making him a deist, he absented it from interference in our own affairs. He wrote to Timothy Pickering on February 27, 1821, "No one sees with greater pleasure than myself the progress of reason in its advances towards rational Christianity, when we shall done away the incomprehensible jargon of the Trinitarian arithmetic, that three are one and one is three, when we shall have knocked down the artificial scaffolding reared to mask from view the simple structure of Jesus, when, in short, we shall have unlearned everything which has been taught since his day, and got back to the pure and simple doctrines he inculcated, we shall then be truly and worthily his disciples. And my opinion is that if nothing had ever been added to what flowed purely from his lips, the whole world would at this day have been Christian." In Jefferson's view, if we all simply lived by the things Jesus said and not by our constructed divine beliefs in him, things would be much different. I dare say he was right. The radical Christian right today encompasses everything Jefferson feared about the religion and why he stood against it as a theocratic system of governance, why he was so adamant about the important wall of separation between church and state. Jefferson's belief in reason as the most important aspect of any prudent system, coming straight from the Enlightenment he was so transfixed upon and influenced by, he wrote to Peter Carr on August 10, 1787, "Fix reason firmly in her seat, and call to her tribunal every fact, every opinion, question with boldness even the existence of a God, because if there be one, he must more approve the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear." He knew well that anything above question was a prime source of tyranny. It was in his letter to the Baptist Association of Danbury in Connecticut on January 1, 1802, that Jefferson left no doubt as to his famous wall of separation that had been established by the First Amendment. He wrote, "Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Our first non-Christian president left no one to question exactly what he and the other founders intended when they drafted the Constitution, echoing the words of Adams that this nation was not founded on the Christian religion or any other, and Washington's belief in reason and science as those things most beneficial to a society. Human, not divine efforts founded this republic. Our fourth president, James Madison, was a Christian, but also very often in agreement with Jefferson. They communicated regularly later in life about the subject. At the beginning of our republic, Madison warned about the mixing of religion and government when he wrote in a Memorial on Remonstrance on the Religious Rights of Man in 1785, "Religious bondage shackles and debilitates the mind and unfits it for every noble enterprise. During almost 15 centuries has the legal establishment of Christianity been on trial. What have been its fruits? More or less, in all places, pride and indolence in the clergy, ignorance and servility in laity, in both superstition, bigotry, and persecution. What influence, in fact, have ecclesiastical establishments had on society? In some instances, they have been sent to erect a spiritual tyranny on the ruins of the civil authority. On many instances, they have been seen upholding the thrones of political tyranny. In no instance have they been the guardians of the liberties of the people. Rulers who wish to subvert the public liberty may have found an established clergy convenient auxiliaries. A just government, instituted to secure and perpetuate it, needs them not." In fact, in that same writing, Madison spoke to the various belief systems within Christianity itself, never mind other religions, and the ease with which an institutionalized system of belief could be tyrannical even to those who held the same belief, perhaps in different ways. He wrote, "Who does not see that the same authority which can establish Christianity in exclusion of all other religions may establish with the same ease any particular sect of Christians in exclusion of all other sects? That the same authority which can force a citizen to contribute 3 pence only of his property for the support of any one establishment may force him to conform to any other establishment in all cases whatsoever." Madison was adamantly opposed to establishing an office for a chaplain in the United States Congress, of mixing prayer at open sessions with the work of government. He wrote in Detached Memoranda, Amendment 1 in 1817, "Strongly guarded as is the separation between religion and government in the Constitution of the United States, the danger of encroachment by ecclesiastical bodies may be illustrated by precedents already furnished in their short history. The establishment of the chaplainship to Congress is a palpable violation of constitutional principles." He was again as forceful as Jefferson had been about the purpose of the First Amendment, both of them founders and participants in the Constitutional Convention founding the Republic, that a wall of separation was necessary. The affairs of religion must stay out of the affairs of government and vice versa. Madison, like all other founders, had been heavily influenced by the Enlightenment. He wrote in a letter to Frederick C. Schaeffer on December 3, 1821, "The experience of the United States is a happy disproof of the error so long rooted in the unenlightened minds of well-meaning Christians, as well as in the corrupt hearts of persecuting usurpers, that without a legal incorporation of religious and civil polity neither could be supported. A mutual independence is found most friendly to practical religion, to social harmony, and to political prosperity. In his view, never should the two meet and greet in the same hall." A year later, he reinforced this in a letter to Sir Edward Livingston on July 10, 1822, writing, "And I have no doubt that every new example will succeed, as every past one has done, in showing that religion and government will both exist in greater purity the less they are mixed together." I want to include two other founders here, neither of whom ever became president, but were absolutely indispensable to the American Revolution and the birth of this new nation: Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Paine. Paine's common sense was a force for the revolution itself, sold far and wide in the colonies as an immediate sensation. In proportion to the population of the colonies at that time, about 2.5 million, it had the largest sale and circulation of any book published in American history, including the Bible. The influence of the Enlightenment upon Paine was evident when he wrote, "I do not believe in the creed professed by the Jewish Church, by the Roman Church, by the Greek Church, by the Turkish Church, by the Protestant Church, nor by any church that I know of. My own mind is my own church." Franklin made his own deism very clear, writing in his autobiography in 1790, "Some books of deism fell into my hands. They were said to be the substance of sermons preached at Boyle's lectures. It happened that they wrought an effect on me quite contrary to what was intended by them. For the arguments of the deists which were quoted to be refuted appeared to me much stronger than the refutations. In short, I soon became a thorough deist. Religion I found to be without any tendency to inspire, promote, or confirm morality. It serves principally to divide us and make us unfriendly to one another." If this nation was founded as a Christian nation, Thomas Paine would have been tarred, feathered, and probably hung given his open non-belief as an atheist. He certainly would not have been a popular author leading to the Revolution and independence. He wrote in Age of Reason in 1794, "Of all the systems of religion that ever were invented, there is no more derogatory to the Almighty, more unedifying to man, more repugnant to reason, and more contradictory to itself than this thing called Christianity. Too absurd for belief, too impossible to convince, and too inconsistent for practice. It renders the heart torpid or produces only atheists or fanatics. As an engine of power, it serves the purpose of despotism, and as a means of wealth, the avarice of priests. But so far as respects the good of man in general, it leads to nothing here or hereafter. All national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, appear to me no other than human inventions, set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit." However, that was actually tame for Paine. He wrote in the same book, "It would be more consistent that we call the Bible the work of a demon than the Word of God. It is a history of wickedness that has served to corrupt and brutalize mankind." Seriously, the man was calling the Bible itself the work of a demon and chastising its worth as anything more than a tool of tyranny and oppression. Was he tarred and feathered? Was he hung? Was he run out of town? Was he even shunned in this nation allegedly founded as a Christian nation? No, not at all. His writings were celebrated and read by massive numbers of people. It is true that later Christians would tar, feather, and hang him metaphorically, posthumously. It wouldn't be until our own modern period that he was resurrected by secular people refusing to be quieted by the radical Christian right any longer, refusing to be silenced into submission. Moving into the 20th century and the anti-communist Christian surge during the Red Scare, a militant form of the religion had once again taken hold, forcing itself upon the population in local, state, and federal law as an embarrassment to what our founders intended in their own words. And now they are getting louder and ever more oppressive in their quest to make this country what it was never intended to be, a Christian nation. The increasing noise is expected when the majority sees their power waning as their numbers decrease. Pews are being left empty as now fewer than 50% of Americans claim to attend any church at all, leaving more churches to close than ever, as the coffers have no funds with smaller congregations. In fact, now about 57% of Americans claim no religious affiliation at all. Radical right Christians are left to attempt to institute minority fascist rule, and that's exactly what they're doing. Our founders intended a system in which the minority had a voice and the ability to influence matters, but not one in which the minority could completely subjugate the majority to their whims, religious or otherwise. That is autocracy. The rise of Trump, heavily supported by evangelicals, took them to new extremes, literally talking about secession or forceful takeover if necessary, in what they would be by definition a fascist government. If it means ignoring and lying about lawful elections and storming the Capitol steps, that's what they'll do. Oh, wait, they did. We, you and me, are the only ones who can stop it and return this nation to what our founders created. We are the true inheritors of the slogan they love to push, 1776. If anyone needs to take our country back and make America great again, it's us. Republicans have nominated wild, crazy Trumpers for the 2022 midterms. If we don't come out in force in November, showing midterm numbers equivalent to a presidential election, and put an end to this fascist usurpation of our republic, we will lose it. Or we can do nothing, stand back, and watch as people elect their own ruin, just as they did in Germany in 1933. Will our future be the one envisioned by George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Paine? Or will it be a future envisioned by a monster we defeated in World War II, Adolf Hitler, the icon of the modern radical Christian right? The choice is ours.